Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Hey, for those in March who haven't already ditched their New Year's resolution, maybe a new pair of Raycons like their everyday earbuds can help fill your morning walk with some good sounds. Their optimized gel tips giving you the perfect comfortable fit for your ears ensure they ain't falling off your head anytime soon. Though I wouldn't recommend testing that during an earthquake, go find help first. And with over 8 hours of playtime, 32-hour total battery life thanks to the rechargeable carrying case, starting at about half the price of other premium audio brands, the everyday earbuds have over 48,000 5-star reviews for a reason and why they're my go-to choice for workout and yoga sessions. So to get started on a great deal, click the link in the description below or go to buyraycon.com/somecallmejohnny to save 15% off your next Raycon purchase. Your support, as always, is greatly appreciated. It's what makes all this possible in the first place. But let's continue on with the show. Alright, I'm back from a small break after finishing the Final Fantasy VII video. Let's head back to the Resident Evil series and tackle the rest of the mainline games. And this one, I vividly remember not finishing when I first got to it years ago. It's October of 2012, right? And at this point, I was already a full-fledged YouTuber, so I had extra time to play games for either myself or the channel. And Resident Evil 6 was something I was excited for, although not to the extent of Resident Evil 5, but it gave me plenty of reason to get amped anyway, mainly because Leon S. Kennedy from RE2 and RE4 was coming back, and I was like, ooh, yes please, I wanted more of Resident Evil 4. And that's probably the main reason why Leon was coming back at all. But the dude was also the star of a few of those CGI movie tie-ins that were released around this time. What was it? Resident Evil Degeneration and Resident Evil Damnation. I saw these when they came out, and what a snooze fest. Paul Mercer, I loved him as Leon in Resident Evil 4 proper, but man, his voice direction is so lifeless here. Not to mention the character animation outside of action sequences. What the fuck is this shit?
It was a success. The infection rate was kept as minimal as possible.
We just ended up making things worse.
That's not true. 7 years ago, our lives were changed forever by the virus from Umbrella Corp.
But to my surprise, it seemed like Resident Evil 6 wanted to go further back, like before Resident Evil 4. They were bringing back zombies, and fuck, I mean, what a time. Yeah, zombies were everywhere around this time, if not in dedicated games, then as kooky side modes and otherwise action-packed titles like in Call of Duty. Maybe I'm misremembering, but the horror genre in of itself was kind of waning though, wasn't it? At least in the mainstream market. I'm not talking the indie scene because I know there, it never petered out. I'm not entirely certain on that because it wasn't something I was actively following around the time, but I also feel that's because this era was more about the high-octane, kinetic as shit action. There was no time for atmosphere or subtlety. We gotta move, move, move. And Resident Evil 6, I feel, perfectly captures this spirit, and that is both a compliment and a critique. Until Monster Hunter World released in 2018, Resident Evil 5 would become Capcom's best-selling game of all time. It was a huge win for the company, so for the next game it was like, okay, multi-platform is the way to go and bigger is better. This next one's gonna get all the production values, a bigger budget, a bigger staff, and they're gonna try and cater to all fans of the series, old and new. They're gonna cram so much shit into this that it'll be a Resident Evil for the ages. And why stop at just bringing back Leon Kennedy? Fuck, they're also gonna bring back Chris Redfield, Ada Wong, Sherry Birkin from Resident Evil 2. This was Resident Evil 6. So where does this series go in a world where Umbrella no longer exists and one of the franchise's most distinguishable villains is wiped out in the middle of an active volcano? The answer? Fucking Metal Gear Solid, because we're not just talking about the return of viruses, BOWs, and zombies, but also straight up global conspiracy shit that goes beyond the machinations of an evil pharmaceutical company. This game, and I think a side game beforehand, plants the seeds for this group called the Family. According to Ada Wong, the ones that really runs this country. It's the Patriots. That's what it is, right? It's the fucking Patriots. But I'll tell you now, that is just something that's set up for future games, or maybe it's already been resolved in one of the spin-offs, maybe the Revelation series, I don't know. I haven't beaten those games as of this video, so I can't say for sure. The immediate threat of Resident Evil 6 is one Derek Simmons, the National Security Advisor of the United States, and former head of the so-called family I mentioned earlier that wants to keep things under their thumbs. The current president of the United States, though, has decided that for the world to work towards a better tomorrow, they need to come clean with their ties to the Umbrella Corporation that ultimately led to the destruction of Raccoon City so many years back. Kind of a weird time for that to suddenly start being a thing. I always figured that was, handled off screen when Umbrella went bankrupt. I mean, the media coverage had to be all encompassing, yeah? Well, anyway, Simmons ain't a fan of the president's idea and concocts a plan to have the president assassinated, not by simply hiring a hitman to do the job, but by releasing an airborne virus in the town he lives in that ends up converting him and over 70,000 other people into zombies, eventually leading to the town getting wiped off the planet in an airstrike to keep the viral outbreak contained. Can you say overkill? But America isn't the only place suffering from a viral attack, for China is also seeing its share of BOW bullshit, and this is thanks to Carla, God, I think it's pronounced Radames? I don't think her last name is ever said out loud in any cutscenes, so kinda eyeballing it here. Anyway, she's the leader and founder of Neo Umbrella. She looks like Ada Wong, and you wanna know why? Get this shit. So Derek Simmons had an uncomfortably large boner for Ada Wong. Yeah, Ada wasn't interested because, well, she's Ada Wong. The only thing I think she genuinely loves is that grappling hook, and maybe Leon, I don't know. But Derek Simmons wouldn't take rejection well, and using his wealth and connections, decided to take one of his leading scientists and use the C virus to physically transform her into a copy of Ada Wong. To do what with, I don't want to think about, but yeah, that's pretty fucked up. It's like, dude, just get a fucking sex doll and, I don't know, tape a printed picture of Ada on top of that. It's no less creepy, but certainly less traumatizing for Carla, who ain't too happy about her predicament. So now she wants to not only stick it to Simmons, but also stick it to the rest of the world by using an enhanced form of the C virus to send the planet into utter chaos. And this ain't like Wesker's Darwinist shit. We're talking scorched earth here. And this is where our protagonists come in. Returning from Resident Evil 4, we have Leon Kennedy, who was the president's bodyguard and wants to stop Simmons to avenge him and protect the innocent and all that jazz. Joining him is Helena Harper, a Secret Service agent that was originally blackmailed into helping Simmons carry out his presidential assassination plan. Otherwise, her sister would be killed, but her sister ends up killed anyway because Simmons is an asshole, and Helena not only wants vengeance, but to repent for her sins, essentially. Over in the other part of the world, we have Sherry Birkin, now all grown up and working for the United States government as an agent that technically answers to Simmons, but Sherry isn't aware of how much of a douchebag her boss really is and just goes with the flow for now. Given her previous experiences involving her dad and the G-Virus, Sherry is not only a capable fighter now, but she can also regenerate from lethal wounds that is brought up once and never touched upon again. Her mission is to find and extract one Jake Muller, a mercenary that carries antibodies for the C-Virus that can be used to create an eventual vaccine. Jake is also Albert Wesker's son.
What?
Yeah, Wesker apparently had some downtime in the early 90s and made some babies with someone. Like, who did Wesker fuck? I could have sworn he had the hots for Chris, or maybe William Birkin, I don't know. But Jake clearly takes after his dad, his genetic makeup not only making him immune to the virus, but also giving him near superhuman reflexes. He can swing on poles and I can't. That makes him superhuman to me. On the hunt for Carla and Neo Umbrella, we have Chris Redfield and his BSAA squad. And by that, I mean Pierce, and only Pierce, because fuck, man, Chris isn't allowed to have a healthy squad. He's more of a Jinx than Cecil in Final Fantasy IV, and put through the mental ringer harder than Cloud in Final Fantasy VII. We find him in a drunken stupor when we start his campaign, and not too long in we find out why. He lost a bunch of his men thanks to Carla's shenanigans a few months prior. It straight up gave Chris post-traumatic amnesia or something, or it could be just straight up PTSD, but he's in a rut, and it isn't until his fellow agent Pierce talks him out of it and convinces him to continue his work for the BSAA. As agents for the BSAA, Chris and Pierce do what they can to contain the outbreak in China, eventually leading them on the path towards Carla once more, who they mistakenly believe is Ada Wong because, well, can you blame them? This inevitably leads Chris to cross paths with Leon, who is also following the trail who he believes to be Ada, but wants to protect her as a key witness to everything that's been happening, while Chris wants her just straight up dead. Should I talk about how Chris is a Jinx? But he's a saint next to Leon and Helena, who I swear everyone they meet, be they civilian or otherwise, will fucking die because fate hates their guts. Survivors of the city, dead. A whole bunch of people in China getting chemically nuked. They're dead. There's a bit near the end where you fight a mutated Simmons, who's now a dinosaur for the record, and this random BSAA agent gives you some assistance with the Jeep and mounted guns, but then the vehicle gets trashed, but if that wasn't enough, the dude catches fire, and then the car fucking explodes! And I wish I was recording myself during this because you had to have heard the laughing fit I was experiencing when I saw that. And this moment here where Chris and Leon duke it out for a few seconds is probably the first thing the writers cooked up behind the scenes and really wanted to make, so I like to think they centered the whole plot on just getting to this point. That is my honest to God belief. I think they just wanted an excuse for Leon and Chris to fight for a bit. A battle of the blockbusters, I will not hear otherwise. For all the characters Resident Evil 6 brings, and there's a lot of threads, it's one of the longest games in the franchise so far, the story is just an action-packed schlockfest. It's about as deep as a rain puddle, and I want to stress again when regarding Resident Evil, that's not a bad thing. If we're talking solely on the story, I think Resident Evil 6 is pretty damn entertaining and just as stupid as the previous two games, and sometimes incredibly horny. There's no shortage of gratuitous ass shots with Ada during her campaign, the thing that crawls around the church full of survivors looking like a bunch of titties strapped together. Oh my god, there is not enough Y-boner to justify fully comprehending the boss fight against Helena's sister Deborah. I mean, this is the most provocative encounter in the series, yeah? Is there a hornier concept anywhere else outside of Wesker in the finale of Resident Evil 5? Good lord. Unfortunately, Resident Evil 6 has the same problem as last time where, despite the schlock, the game doesn't feel as self-aware as Resident Evil 4. They try to play things straight again, and maybe that's the joke. I don't know, it's hard to tell what's parody or not in the series anymore, but I don't think that was the intention, and it causes the story's attempt at having serious moments to fall flat on their ass, or don't have the emotional pull as they might think it has. That mainly centers on newcomer Jake, who in a lot of ways you can just view as Capcom trying to give Resident Evil a slice of Devil May Cry action. I mean, he is just straight up a Devil May Cry protagonist. Which one? I'm not going there. Amongst the other campaigns, I enjoy the dynamic he shares with Sherry the most. I mean, what, Leon and Helena, where Helena spends a good portion of earlier chapters blueballing Leon longer than she needs to regarding info on the BOW attack? My god, just tell Leon what you know and let's just get a move on, Christ. Chris and Piers are comrades in arms, and I like the dialogue they exchange with each other, but most of the campaign is just Chris dealing with his anger issues and getting his squad killed because of it. Piers gets the coolest moment of the game though, injecting himself with the C-virus to save Chris from this Castlevania abomination, and now he has like fucking force lightning powers. It's implied that he dies at the end, but I like to see him come back and act as Chris's new BOW buddy. It'd make one hell of a sitcom at least. It's not really the main point of the campaign, I think, but I like that there's a connection with Jake and Sherry given who their fathers were. The polarity has shifted so hard since the Wesker and Birkin days of Resident Evil 0, you get me? But then you got your moments like this where in one scene Jake claims he never really cared for his father even after learning what kind of man he was thanks to Sherry. But then later, after learning that Chris was the one who killed Wesker, he's suddenly very angry about that and almost shoots Chris point blank, and I'm like, huh? Where the hell did that come from?
There are more important things at stake than you and me.
What? It was never about you or Chris. 95% of this game's plot is focused on Simmons and Carla, not Chris's relation with Wesker. What does the story think it's trying to do here? Also in the middle of all of this is Ada Wong, the real Ada Wong, who on top of stopping Carla and Simmons from ruining her already elusive reputation, is still on her elusive bullshit that, I'm sorry, it got real tiring at this point. She's aware of the ones really pulling the strings behind the country, directly and indirectly helping Leon and the others take care of business, while at the same time keeping her needs above everything else. Basically more of the same stuff we saw in her separate way scenario in Resident Evil 4, but with a considerably larger amount of observational dialogue that just makes her sound so incredibly fucking bored. Ada Wong is a character I think works best when she's bouncing off someone else constantly. By herself, the smarmy, emotionally unfazed, borderline dead inside personality has all the attraction of expired milk, and I just want it gone, despite zipping through scripted sequences with her grappling hook to be visually stimulating. Honestly, that's the whole thing with Resident Evil 6. It's just constant, non-stop visual stimulation that wants nothing to do with its survival horror roots. The game does not stop. It does not want to stop. It just wants to go, 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 go. It depends a bit on the character in question, but this game is mostly linear hallways with a bunch of similar action pieces that put your gun skills to work, or your reflexes with the overabundance of QTEs. There are barely any puzzles to solve, Ada having a few that act as the exception rather than the rule. But these feel so slapdash on this package and not designed as well as previous puzzles, it feels like an obligation rather than a necessitation. There are no files or journals to pick up along the way and read. All of that is now hidden behind these blue medallions that you may or may not find, and they're sectioned off in the game's options so you can read up on character and world building outside of the main game. They don't want you doing that in the game, slowing things down, because this train ride does not slow down. Item management is not really a thing. There's still some hard limits on the amount of things you can carry, and yeah, a couple of times I found myself chucking a grenade just so I can grab a green herb and put it in my fucking Pez dispenser. I miss how you were able to use herbs on the spot like you could do in the other games, so you didn't need to do shit like this. And it's a small thing, but I don't like how healing items were handled here visually. You can still combine herbs to get better potencies, but you convert them into pills now and pop them like opium. It just looks wrong. The user interface is different for every character, but they all feel so cold and sterile, and jeez, look at all these cubes. God, the fucking cube phone that Ada uses in her story. I don't know if Capcom was trying to bank on the Tesseract from the Avengers since that was a thing at this point, or that they were really hoping that this is where smartphones were heading so that they can claim the merchandising rights, but it ends up looking like one of the dumbest fucking inventions ever made. Why does it need to be a cube just to talk to somebody? You're talking to a cube. There's still no attaché case from Resident Evil 4, but it's a lot better than the shit that was in Resident Evil 5. Cycling through items is as easy as hitting a direction on the D-pad and watches your character's arms spaz the fuck out when you get funny and start spamming that shit. What is going on with their arms? Why are they rigged like that? And it's not just there either. You can give your buddy a thumbs up or a good job, and the way the arm just looks so detached from the body.
I'm glad you're here.
Oh man. But yeah, co-op is back, the same kind from Resident Evil 5, letting you play this adventure solo or with a friend, local or online, solving whatever conundrum the game throws at you, which 9 times out of 10 is tossing your buddy across a pit and watching them flick a switch to reunite you two lickety-split, and I'm not kidding when I say that is most of what co-op amounts to outside of gunfights. I decided to go solo for this review since it was just easier for my current scheduling, and I want to say most of my experience was okay. The AI was generally good with tackling threats, and they have infinite health and ammo now, so you don't have to babysit their items and all that, and that's a legitimate improvement from before. Their priorities could use some work though. They don't pick up items or skill points you can use for the shop, so sometimes I find myself deliberately backtracking through the path they just took so I can claim the rewards that they didn't. Unless I'm forgetting to unlock a door for them to cross or some other shit, they get caught up in the crossfire a little too much for my liking, and there was an annoyingly high amount of times where, in the middle of one of the game's many do or die running sequences, I would accidentally knock my buddy down with a slide or some other maneuver, and they'd fucking die from whatever's chasing us. I can't do anything about that, it's random if Jake gets hit by my slide or not. Boy oh boy, mechanically I think Resident Evil 6 is solid, and they fine-tuned the shit out of the over-the-shoulder action, on top of being able to move and shoot at the same time now, and I know for some back then it was like a second coming of Christ, it was such a big deal. Tank controls are gone now, movement feels very smooth, melee attacks have been given a dedicated button, so you don't necessarily have to stagger an enemy just to use one, though that strategy is still viable if old habits end up dying hard for you. You can also straight up counter certain attacks and get the jump on an enemy in a nasty follow-up. It's a little hard to time, and if you fuck up, the damage you end up taking racks up fast, so it's a risk versus reward sort of thing. As I got better weapons and purchased certain perks in the game's rather cold and sterile skill shop, the counter was something I forgot more and more as I played, like it's no dodge mechanic from Resident Evil 3 Remake, and towards the end of my journey I found myself doing baseball slides past goons to avoid confrontations, and that was pretty fun. However, you do have a stamina meter now, so you can only perform so many maneuvers before your character gets winded for a bit. That never became an issue for me though, so unless you want to do like a mixed martial arts challenge, you should always have plenty of stamina for melee attacks and all that. You know, give them a full frontal assault, or sneak behind them for a killing blow, a quick stomp to the face, a German suplex, a neck snap. The variety is there and it's welcomed. You can also combine that stamina with your gun and do this quick shot maneuver that, with the shotgun especially, is super effective against either zombies or the Juavo, the mutated goons of this game. Despite there being 7 characters total to choose from, each campaign having 2 to select, the exception being Ada, with 1 or 2 differences, shit, sometimes not even that. They all play relatively similarly, so it's a matter of preference. And I'll say again that, mechanically speaking, Resident Evil 6 is fine, but it's the campaigns that's supposed to glue everything together is where the adhesive dissolves apart. I hope that made sense. So okay, for the first time since, I want to say Resident Evil 2, because Code Veronica was one story leading into another, we're back to multiple campaigns, each chronicling the adventures of a specific team. You can play in any order you want, with some occasional crossover where you run into other characters in the middle of their adventure. While each campaign exists in a bubble for the most part, you're supposed to play all the characters to get the complete picture and help make sense of things collectively that don't make sense individually. I like to think of it like Sonic Adventure because of course I'd fucking say that, and sadly, just like that game, your experience is significantly measured on that campaign's actual quality, which may greatly vary depending on what you look for in a Resident Evil game, and sometimes there will be occasions where you have to do certain boss battles and events again because of the circumstances of the encounter, similar to how like everybody had it out for Chaos 4 and Sonic Adventure, that poor fuck. I will say now, this is not a Resident Evil game. It's called Resident Evil, yeah, there are familiar characters front and center, but if you thought Resident Evil 5 was veering so far from the survival horror roots, Jesus H. Christ, you haven't seen Resident Evil 6. It's all action. The energy is non-stop. The explosions keep coming, and I lost count over the number of times where a character thinks they have a momentary reprieve, only for things to get dour all over again. Nobody's allowed to breathe in this game. Across 4 different campaigns leading to a runtime of close to 20 hours, this shit gets exhausting after a bit because that's all this game has for set pieces, explosions and shit turning south. That's the entire campaign for all of these characters. It's something I took notice of very early during my first playthrough years ago, and back then I suffered a lot of deaths that I felt weren't my fault because of how kinetic stage progression was, and how it all happened in real time with no dedicated cutscenes to give you some warning. God, during the tail end of the city sequence of Leon's first chapter, I can't tell you how many times I died to a vehicle suddenly swerving on screen that would just sideswipe me, and that's that. I think every campaign has moments like this where, with no warning, you are just sent to your doom because of an event transition. However, the real-time bullshit and homogeneity notwithstanding, there are some campaigns that are still better than others. If I were to rank them from best to worst, I'd say Leon was my favorite, Chris coming in second place, Ada averaging out on third, with Jake scraping the bottom of that barrel. Leon's campaign feels it has the most effort placed in it, outside of the news anchor, and is very obvious. My god, that looks so bad. Every campaign is split into 5 chapters, but Leon's chapters easily take the longest of the bunch with a mix of unique and varied locations. You have this college community, you have a cathedral not too far off from there, a fucking miles deep catacomb underneath that cathedral. Holy shit, how is something this gargantuan underneath a fucking church in a US city? Hot damn. Then he has the exotic China locale, and he gets some pretty climactic encounters throughout the journey. The zombies are pretty cool to see come back. I find them to be a good blend of the classic zombie from before and the more limber goons from future games. Some are almost ripped wholesale from Left 4 Dead though, right? There's a screaming zombie that can attract other zombies, and holy fuck. He's fat! Given that the PC version of Resident Evil 6 has Left 4 Dead characters available in the Mercenaries game, I'm gonna assume this is a deliberate homage, and you know what, that's fine. There's something morbidly funny about shooting an obese zombie. Even in death, they can't catch a fucking break. I was heading into Chris's campaign expecting the worst because I've heard through the grapevine for many years that Chris was like the Gears of War campaign or Call of Duty. Yes, Chris does have the most shooty bang bang elements of Resident Evil 6, but I ended up not hating it. Despite having so much gunplay and a cover system that felt so awkward that I tried to avoid it when I could, I found it light on the bullshit. You were given plenty of ammo in this run compared to other characters where sometimes I felt like I only had barely enough ammunition to survive the numerous onslaughts that the game forced me to deal with. Chris and Piers have a healthy selection of weapons, their melee attacks are damn reliable. Again, it's no survival horror stuff, that's the case with the whole game, but what's here is a consistent romp that I didn't find much issue with. It's generic as shit, but it does its job. It also gives Chris the option to ride this panda in the playground, and it's just wonderfully pathetic witnessing Chris ride this all by his lonesome. Ada's campaign is the shortest of the bunch, and originally you could only play it when you completed the other 3 campaigns first, but re-releases removed that restriction. And for the better, I wouldn't call Ada's campaign the Supersonic chapter to compare it again to Sonic Adventure. She just serves to explain what exactly she was doing during everyone else's shenanigans, eventually leading her to confronting her doppelganger Carla and Derek Simmons. Like I said earlier, she's also the game's attempt at adding puzzles to the mix, and I think they're pretty forgettable. She gets to ride a helicopter though, and that helicopter pilot curse hit me hard because I ate a lot of shit against this other chopper more times than I care to admit. I didn't realize I could move the chopper freely now when before I was confined to an automated hallway, I'm sorry. Overall, a pretty forgettable campaign that I don't think compares to Separate Ways in Resident Evil 4. Jake, holy shit, I wanted to stop playing the game a couple of times here. I ran into the most bullshit with this one. Getting my partner killed with the slide that I could not help because the AI constantly got in the way, getting shot by a sniper in the mountains, then sliding a million miles back because I was on ice. You can run up the ice just fine for the record. Plenty of problems with the AI's Pathfinder, getting killed by real-time bullshit. This had it all. I should clarify that I decided to play as Sherry for my main campaign run because I thought playing as Sherry would be cool. There's history there, and I didn't really care for Jake as a character. But maybe I should have stuck with Jake because as I found out in a Mercenaries run I did with him later, the dude has some damn good melee attacks. Sherry has this stun rod that isn't bad but has a weird time connecting a solid hit. I found it good for those regenerator wannabes, but not much else. But this campaign could not make up its goddamn mind. Did it want to be a survival horror adventure with how this big dude constantly hounded you in certain chapters like Nemesis did previously? Did it want to be a stealth game in a title that doesn't have much in stealth kills? Did it want to be an explorative adventure title, something straight out of Uncharted with this over-the-top avalanche sequence that made me feel like I was playing a Crash Bandicoot game rather than a Resident Evil title? Like, what is happening here? Playing as Sherry also highlights how awkward some of these set pieces are when you're not in control of Jake, and it's hilarious as shit. The motorcycle sequence looks so jank when you're shooting things with Sherry. The graphical pop-up is gratuitous as shit. Oh my god, the boat sequence where Jake has to steer it away from debris. Sherry and Jake are screaming their asses off like, "Watch out!" And then the camera cuts to the boat quietly passing the debris with no dramatic flair.
Watch out!
It reminded me a bit of Undercover Brother. In a game that people claim to be confused with its direction, I found Jake's campaign to be confusion on top of confusion, and it being all over the place made me sour on it so fast. This wasn't the one for me. Resident Evil 6 wore me the hell out. If you're thinking of playing this, I wouldn't recommend marathoning through all 4 campaigns in about a week's time like I did. Take your time with it if you decide to pick it up. I admire the developer's intent on catering to different audiences, but the old saying goes, if you try to please everyone, you may end up pleasing no one. I wouldn't call Resident Evil 6 a bad game, but it is a bloated one, and I don't find myself going back to it for a long time, if ever. Maybe next time I'll try it with co-op, maybe next time I'll try it with a different character. Maybe one day I'll go back and complete Mercenaries. I did find myself having fun playing that again. It's kind of hard to screw up Mercenaries, I think, but I got tired. I just wanted to move on. Either way, after this, the mainline Resident Evil series would go on a bit of a hiatus. Resident Evil 6 sold well, but critically it was lukewarm, and a good portion of the fan base wanted nothing to do with it. You could do worse, I'd still play it over like Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica, but that's just me, you know? The game is also dirt cheap nowadays. I saw it going for about $8 on Steam, and I think considering the runtime and production values, you know, that's not so bad. So I give it a recommend. Next time though, we're gonna see how Capcom responded to that feedback. Like, years later, with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Yeah, they're coming with subtitles now. Moving on to Greener Pastures, looks like. This is the deluxe edition with the VR headset stuff included. I'm not going to be covering the VR stuff. I don't have a VR headset, and I don't plan on having one anytime soon. I got bad memories of the VR headset, so just going to be talking about like the base vanilla game and like the DLC chapters and shit like that. Maybe one day I'll get a VR headset and knock shit all over the place, but not anytime soon, you know? Well, either way, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, get vaccinated if it's possible. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care. It took everything in my power not to write a coronavirus joke with the C virus.